my name is Cindy Harsany. I am partner and CFO with Harsany Associates. I want to thank you for joining us today on this first day of Strengthening Resilience Communities Conference as a part of the Ohio CDC Association Annual Conference. Doug Harsany, who is the CEO and founder of Harsany Associates, will be presenting with me today as we focus on weathering the storms and improving organizational resiliency. As a part of our presentation today, we will bring you up close and personal to look inside a resilient organization. In part one, I will be taking you through cultures and people, and in part two, Doug will be guiding you through plans and partnerships. Before we conclude, you will have the opportunity to assess yourself and your organization to see how resilient you are as a leader and the organization you work with. It is necessary for resiliency that you be prepared to navigate change for an unknown future. So today we're going to take you through what that looks like, but before I start, I want to do just a speck of housekeeping. I'm sure over the past several months, if you had not used Zoom, you have already been using it some, but just a few things in relationship to this session today. It is being recorded and you will have access to it later. The Dropbox link, which should be in the chat as is a session resource. And if you would like to turn off your camera, feel free to do so, though we encourage you to have it during any breakouts and interactive moments. We will be having a question and answer at the end, and I think that's the main time that you'll have the opportunity to talk as a part of this session. Feel free to toggle your settings to speaker view or grid view. This is in the top right of the settings. Speaker view highlights the speakers, and the grid view will show all the boxes. Closed captioning can be accessed by clicking on the Alt L on the top of the left of your screen. This says Otter AI, I'm not sure, at the left of your screen. If you need that and you do not know how to do it, then please go ahead and write it in chat or maybe raise your hand to ask that question. It will open another window for you. We have everyone muted to eliminate any background noise, and chat is being monitored for your questions. So please send your questions into the chat as you have them through the presentation. To chat privately to a specific person, you can select the drop-down menu and find that specific person to send a message to. Please be sure to visit our exhibitor space to check out some of the conference's sponsors. The link is in the chat, and thank you to all the sponsors of this conference. Thank you very much. As we move into part one of this session, we would like to get to know each of you just a little better. We never want to lose sight of the human element, no matter what our circumstances are that we find ourselves in. So today we would like the opportunity to get to know each other a little better with this 3-question poll. Thank you very much. That is very interesting. Seems like we do have more dog lovers than cat lovers, and that some of you are brave enough to try skydiving even if you haven't. I don't know if everybody's finished the poll. I think it's all stopped moving here. Yes, okay, I see the orange coming in. Dogs won. Okay, dogs. And we have a lot of very adventuresome people who would be willing to try skydiving. Some of you actually have. And the majority prefer the mountains for vacation. So thank you for just letting us know a little bit about ourselves as an audience as we go through this today. All right, so as I start part one, I will ask the question, how can you weather the storms? So it's going to sound like I just wrapped the presentation very simply by being a resilient organization. But no, we're not done yet. But yes, I just gave my question and answer for my whole part. Organizational success in today's COVID crisis and failures were occurring before the crisis ever happened. There was a successful condominium builder in Columbus, Ohio, and franchisor. They started building condominiums in the mid-1990s. They caught on really fast. The company was just so successful. Whoops, I think I just got muted.
You're all good, Cindy. We can hear you. You're not muted.
Okay, good. All right. So back to my story. So this condominium builder, they were doing very, very well. And at the Christmas party in 2007, the owners of the company got up and they thanked their employees. They told them that we are continuing to do very well. And they said, you know, our company is going to continue to do well as long as we have land, because our biggest clients are retirees, and retirees, they have cash. So we will continue to year over year, continue to do well. And we thank you so much for how much you support this organization. And it was a very rah-rah speech. And that was Christmas of 2007. Now, 2008 brought a different story. That sounded very logical, that as long as the condominium company had land, they could continue to build. As long as they had retirees that were their primary clients, they would continue to sell. But they oversighted one thing with that assumption. One thing they oversighted. And that was what happened in 2008 when there was a crash in the housing market. When the housing market crashed, they found out that their retirees were with everybody else. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little noise. Is everybody on mute? Thank you. Sorry. The other buyers, and they couldn't sell their condominiums because the senior citizens that wanted their condos because they loved the lifestyle could not sell their own homes. But that was something they had oversighted as a part of their planning. So in 2008, along with the other builders, they lost 50% of their staff. Their sales greatly plummeted because they found out that they had oversighted one thing that could occur, that their retirees could not sell their own homes. Resilient organizations and communities have a plan and are adaptive, creating a culture that empowers their people to successfully navigate change. As we move forward with this presentation, there's a few things that I want you to not forget. There's 4 things that are the key pieces of this part 1 presentation. So remember this, it does not matter what size your organization is, you still will need to have plans and create an adaptive, resilient capabilities within your organization. You will not have the ability to move through crisis. This is number 2. You will not have the ability to move through crisis and change without a culture that provides relationships between people and groups within your organization. Resilience develops from your culture. You're going to hear me resonate this several times. You can have all the plans you want. And you've probably found this. There's strategic plans. All these plans are good. And anytime you want to get something done, maybe there's another plan, whether it's a capital project, always plans, lots of plans. Plans are important. But without people and without relationships, those plans will struggle, be challenged, and sometimes become those dusty documents you talk about. So you're going to hear me talking about your cultures, your people. You can be a resilient organization today. This is my third point. You can be a resilient organization today and you can lose that ability tomorrow, just like the condominium company did. Fourth thing is organizational resilience is an asset. You never want to forget that it's something that's well worth your time, and it is an asset for the organization, the time that you put into it. I want to go over a couple of things about terms. The word resilience is the ability to navigate change. When you hear that word resilience, it is the ability to navigate change. And the word culture, when you're talking about a resilient culture, is a word for the way of life of groups of people or the way they do things. So it doesn't matter. The other thing I want you to remember, because I don't know what sizes of organizations you work for, but it doesn't matter the size. And so often we just get so caught up in our daily life and in our daily jobs and our routine of our jobs, and we don't have time. And most of us are so overworked. Often we either lose people or we have so much that's being asked of us that our infrastructure sometimes can just implode, and you just continue to try to do everything that's expected, and planning or resiliency plan or communication or your people sometimes fall between the cracks. It does not matter what size your organization is. You need to build plans and create adaptive, resilient capabilities. According to a study that was done in the late 1990s, of 1,000 of the largest companies in the world, and these were successful companies, 41% of those successful companies experienced a crisis within a 5-year period. There was a smaller organization, and probably a lot of you have heard of this organization, the Livestrong Foundation. This foundation was started in 1997 by Lance Armstrong. He was a cancer survivor, and he was a former racing cyclist. Back in 2012, the Tour de France, they found that he was doping. He was fudging on paperwork. And it was found that he'd actually been doing this for 7 years. So you can imagine for the Livestrong Foundation, it was quite devastating. He admitted to these charges in 2013. Now, Livestrong Foundation does still exist today. And at the time that in 2012, when this all came out and when the reputation of Livestrong was put on the line, they were making $41 million in sponsorships and people buying their goods. And this money was being used for families who were dealing with cancer, to help them physically or financially, emotionally, to guide them through this crisis in their life. $41 million. Now, not all of that went to the families, but a very significant portion. By 2018, it had been depleted down to 2.5 million. That was a lot of money that could no longer go for those cancer survivors. It was strongly felt. To this day, they are trying to rebrand, step away from the Lance Armstrong scandal, and continue to get Livestrong growing stronger to help these cancer survivors. So I want to ask you, who depends on your organization? Who depends on you to do the job you do, whether you're a leader in your organization or employee? Who is your client? And if your organization is not able to be adaptive, move through challenges, which you just experienced with COVID-19 and are still experiencing, who's being affected? How are your employees affected? And that is your burning platform. That is the thing that makes it important to you to make sure that you are a resilient organization. Because in reality, we only do what we prioritize. That is your reason why you need to prioritize that you become a resilient organization. You become a resilient individual. It's not just the organization, it's you individually. You will not have the ability to move through crisis and change without a culture that provides relationships between people and groups within your organization. Sorry, reading my notes here. So what does that culture look like? It starts by remembering that your team is your biggest asset. Told you you're going to hear me say that a lot. On a personal note, and this gives an opportunity, if any of you that are leaders, or you know, we're all leaders in a way, if you really think about it. There's people that look to us for things at different levels. So this is the test to see how resilient of a leader you are. We're not going to do a poll right now, but I am going to go over this, and I'm going to tell you the 5 different parts of being a strong leader. So as I say each one of these, maybe on a scale of 1 to 10, rate yourself. And at the end of that, you should be able to know how strong of a leader you are and how resilient you are. 5 things. Cognitive agility. It is the extent to which we adapt and shift our thought process for the benefit of others, our teams, and our organizations. How good are you at that? What is your cognitive agility like? 1 to 10, rate yourself. Emotional regulation is the extent to which we regulate our emotions to stay calm and collected, like going through a Senate hearing process. Can't even imagine. It keeps us calm and collected. So rate your emotional regulation. Self-compassion. How compassionate are you with yourself? How much do you beat yourself up when you say the wrong thing or when the results are not what you think? How compassionate are you to yourself? Optimism is hopefulness and confidence about the future. And then self-efficacy is the last one, is the extent to which we feel we have control or personal agency over our lives and events. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how did you rate there? Now there is, take courage if you're rated low. If you're rated high, then say, yay, I am prepared to lift my organization up, help there, be there for them. We will navigate through anything and I will be in that boat and we're going to do great. But if you didn't do as well, just know that it can be learned, it can be taught. So it just points those areas out, what areas that really kind of gauge who you are. You need to be a leader. I'm going to talk about leaders and then I'm going to talk about employees. You need to be a leader that people will follow. Make sure within your job description and planning there is time for your team to lead them, to communicate with them, to be present in their lives. You do not have enough time in your schedule to not include time for engaging your team and creating an inclusive environment of the roles and responsibilities within your organization. If not, you will have turnover, lack of efficiency, toxic work environments, and in the end, it will take even more of your time. Break down the silos. You've heard that word, silos. Create a plan for communication and planning that connects and aligns all areas as important and creates an overall direction that you can go together. Have brainstorming sessions, include them about what the organizational vulnerabilities might be if there's a crisis. Get together and talk about it. Allow your team to have opportunities to be a part of those solutions. Create a collaborative commitment to organizational success and meeting your mission and goals. Make sure that you have cross-trained staff and have job instruction manuals in place. You don't want to leave yourself open to something. Plan. And Doug's going to go over that a little more. Never try to lead on your own. And lead from your heart as well as your head. You want to, sometimes you have to shift your leadership type. There's a time and a place for different leadership. Sometimes it's come with me, mobilize your people towards a vision. Then there's the people come first leader, creating emotional bonds and support. You need to know when it's time to shift your leadership style. Then there's what do you think leadership? You're going to build consistency through participation. Then there's the lead by example, and this is a harder one because you really have to gauge it well. When you're leading by example, you're setting a high performance standard. You're expecting excellence and self-direction. You yourself are leading this. You yourself are putting time and energy into this, but you do not want to burn out your staff. You do not want to demotivate them. You do not want to overwhelm them. But there is time for the lead by example leader. Coaching leadership develops people for the future. And the leadership style aims to bring out the best in your organizational assets. Then there's that heavy hand. Do this leadership. When there is a crisis at times, when you feel like you're taking on water, there's danger. Sometimes it requires you to require immediate compliance, that you need them to do what you say now. But it should only be used in small doses. That type of leadership has a moment in time, but should not be the way you lead at all times. There's some key takeaways that I want to say before I move on to employees. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Strategic plans fail by 90% due to lack of communication. Develop a communication plan within all your plans. Any plan you do, make sure there's a communication plan, even within your daily plans. It's important that you communicate and keep your team on board, and that you hear them, and that they are with you and they are coming along with you. Again, you want to be a leader that your team will follow. Don't run along and never turn around and look back and see that no one's there. Maintain a strategic focus and stay true to your core values. Be aware of the pulse of your organization. One question to ask yourself: do your employees like to come to work? If not, you might want to find out why. And if they do like to come to work, you might want to know that too, because it's also good to know what you're doing right. Be prepared to act in the face of the unknown. Are you prepared for anything? Resilient organizations prepare for difficult situations and show a generalized capacity to investigate, to learn, and to act without knowing what one will be called to act upon. Now, with employee teams, there was a study done in 2015. This was done for public, private, nonprofit firms of 835 employees in Britain. So they're still people, just like we are in the United States. And they were asked, I found this so interesting. This study was done by Sarah Bond and Jillian Shapiro. They were asked what the biggest drain on resilience was at work. Now I'm going to tell you the two most significant drains, and you should be seeing them on the PowerPoint. 75% said when I am managing difficult relationships, politics in the workplace. 70% said when the volume or pace of work stretches me to my limits. That is their biggest drain on resiliency. Now you're going to find also that the organization isn't totally responsible for the resiliency of your employees, but you do need to be aware of what you can do to ensure their resiliency. So I found that very interesting. Now, when they went on with the survey, a second noteworthy question was, where do you get your resilience from? Now, we so often, and I don't want to generalize, but we like to blame other people for anything we're lacking. So I was surprised at this answer. 90% of the people asked in these 835 said that they get their resilience from themselves. So you see, an organization does things that grows resilience, and a person also has it in themselves. 90%. Only 10% said my resilience comes from my organization. So you really want those employees that are resilient. So get out the what you ask when I am hiring little notebook, or type it in. You might want to add a few more questions to the hiring questions that you ask people that might be coming to work for you. At the end of the study, they summarized that resilient people all have 3 characteristics in common. So let's see if you feel that applies to you. Are you a resilient person? Or if you are hiring, what should a resilient person look like? Because you want resilient people in your organization. 3 things: a staunch acceptance of reality, a deep belief often strengthened by strongly held values that life is meaningful, and an uncanny ability to improvise. How good are you at improvising? Can you do it different? If you come to work and your computer isn't working, how do you respond? You have to improvise. So you yourself want to be that resilient person. You want to hire people also that have those 3 abilities. In conclusion, they found that you could bounce back from a crisis if you had 1 or 2 of these capabilities, but it said you were only truly resilient if you have all 3. You can be a resilient organization today and you can lose that ability tomorrow. Strategic plans need to include assessments and plans for change. We do our 5-year goals, we put what we're going to do, we have our 1-year operating plan, but how many of those put in, what if COVID-19 happens? How many of you in your strategic plans had COVID-19 or anything that addressed something that could change? We do our strategic planning normally, planning to change things ourselves based on what we know we need to change to make it happen, but the unknown changes are generally not included, but they need to be. Practice change and get comfortable with it. It's hard for change to come into an environment because we have a routine, and quite often our routine is less stressful for us. But change can become something that you look forward to. So they talked about to not necessarily recreate, keep your, you have your staff, you have your infrastructure, use that, but grow change within it. Get them to be a group that can navigate, that can change when they need to. Practice change, get comfortable with it, challenge your staff to put change into their week. Change one thing, just one thing. In fact, I've been starting to do that in my life, and I do find it's exciting. It's hard for me to change even what I do, but I thought if I'm going to teach change, I have to continue to grow in that myself. So make change something they crave and embrace and are disappointed when things are staying the same. This can actually happen. This will keep your culture in shape to shift with change and to be resilient. Try a new software function, recycle, mentor someone, maybe get to know a person at work that you have never even spoken to before. Change something. Challenge your staff or yourself to do that. This will grow the innovation and the creativity within your organization and develop that resiliency that makes you able to weather any storm. Like I said, organizational resiliency is an asset. Companies that work with and within their existing culture to drive change and get better results have success than those that try completely to change their culture. Some of you have boards and you have leaders. Some of those of you might be one of those. You probably haven't heard this before, but your board chair should not be someone who has a 60-hour, 50-hour week job. They should have someone that has time in their schedule to guide a board, to make sure there's plans, that they are support to the organization, to make sure they have the infrastructure, the policies. They are an overarching high-flying group. They should never get in the weeds with you. They always want to make sure that however a board responds, that they show they have confidence in you. They want to avoid taking over and undermining management, confidence, or adding unnecessary burdens. But they need to be there as an asset to the organization. The board has that fiduciary responsibility to make sure you have a resilient organization. Your CEOs and your VPs and your executive directors, they need time in their schedules. You need time to lead, implement, plan. These are very important, and so often that time is not allowed to you. Again, so often decisions are made that there are things that they want you to do or cutbacks they want you to do with staff that actually takes away, and your infrastructure doesn't have the ability to make sure they nurture that important asset of resiliency. But in the end, it will hurt the people you serve. In the end, it will hurt your employees. So do always make sure you have the infrastructure to do what you need and to plan. Statements of CEOs from successful business owners from Columbus, Ohio during COVID. I have 3 examples and I wanted to share this with you. Heartland Bank, Scott McComb. I have 3 companies and they're very successful companies in Columbus. And this is what they said during this time. They said, everyone is looking to you. This is Scott McComb from Heartland Bank, and how you will react with few clear edicts. It is imperative that you work hard to keep your employees informed and safe and their customers abreast of changes that affect them. Everyone has to be on the same page. You need daily senior and management meetings, constant contact with everyone. Rich Schuin is the CEO and principal of Colliers International. He says there'll be a lot of TV to watch and a lot of forecasting outcomes, but you can't control either of those. What you can control is making sure your clients are served. You need a good leadership team and a lot of trust in place to manage your people. Don't wait until a situation like this to build these relationships. Build them over time. And then Sandy Harbrecht, CEO of Paul Worth Associates. If people are not given a way to contribute, they will feel like they are not making much of a difference. They need to feel a part of the solution. Don't forget your people. You've got to have a plan thought out. It's got to involve your whole team. You have to over-communicate. People who are stressed don't process information quickly. So you keep telling and retelling your story over and over again before events happen, before change is necessary. All right, we have 12 polling questions that that I'm asking you to take. Hopefully you looked at how you were individually, but we have 12 questions here and we're going to pause after each one. I'm not going to say anything. We're just going to keep going through them. And as you take these, pay attention to where you are, because when you're done with these 12, you will know how resilient your organization is and how much work you might need to do.
Cindy, as I launch these polls,
yes,
are all
go
going
ahead.
to come up at the end, just so you know, instead of
Oh, they
question
are?
by
Okay.
question. Yep.
Okay, so we'll go through them and then Amanda's going to bring them up at the end. Thank you very much for helping with this. So go ahead and go through this and you will know then how resilient your organizations are.
Amanda, people don't seem to be able to vote for some reason. There we go.
We can vote. I think we're all thinking, right? So if the participants can take a look and make sure that you guys are answering the questions and keep it moving so our presenters can do a great job helping you guys with the information, that would be great. So thanks for those that are slowly starting to answer those questions. Thanks to everyone that's participating in the polls. We're going to go ahead and let this go for 3 minutes before I share the results and let Cindy discuss that just a little bit. So you guys have about 40 seconds if you haven't responded to make sure that you get all of your voting in. We do have 2 more questions, so if everyone could pay attention to those 2 questions we just launched and be sure to answer, we'll give those another minute or so. Okay, you guys, thanks for participating in the poll. We have a minor moment to get the poll results up, so we appreciate your patience. Just give us 1 second.
So I just want to say thank you for taking this. Hopefully it's also let you know how you look next to the other organizations so you can say, well, I guess I'm looking pretty good. Anyway, so it's a self-assessment. It also helps you know in relationship to how other people are doing. These poll results should be available, right, Amanda? And you can look back at these questions and how you did later. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn things over to Doug to do part 2, just out of wanting to respect everybody's time. But hopefully this did give you a view of where you are today. So thank you very much for taking the time to take the poll.
I'm giving Cindy just a minute to get the.
Yeah, I'm working on it. I'm sorry.
So while she gets started, I'm just going to say Cindy's focus was primarily on the internal workings of an organization. Over the next several minutes, I'm going to focus more on those elements that are external. However, there's certainly overlap, and I will end with a discussion of crisis planning. One characteristic of resilient organizations is that they have strong social cohesion. They tend to build strong bridges between themselves and other people and organizations. The strengthening of the social network is vital to improving our your resiliency. There are a variety of ways in which you can strengthen your social network. Increasing the size of your network is an obvious way, but it is also important that your organization be strengthened in other ways. For example, improving the diversity of your social connections is valuable. If you only know accountants but need a plumber, then it becomes more difficult to meet the need in times of adversity or scarcity. Also, the strength of your connections matter. If you reach out to people regularly and have multiple ways in which you connect, then this can increase the likelihood of someone coming to your aid in a time of crisis. The quality of your connections is also important. Eric Seville, in her book Resilient Organizations, talks about what she calls 3 a.m. friends. These are the people that are willing to pick up your phone call in the middle of the night and will help you when you really need it. You can build your social capital in a variety of ways. It's important to think more deeply about the value of your partnerships. We often just look at cost and the basic service being provided, but if we learn to see our partners as a part of our team and choose and treat them accordingly, then they will be stronger partners. For example, I'd like you to think about an organization who provides drinking water in a bottle once a week. Now picture a situation where there's a disaster and nobody has fresh drinking water. What is going to make it to where your organization is a priority for this supplier? Your own social responsibility is also a great way to build social capital. If you help other organizations and people, they in turn are more likely to help you when you need it. Think, for example, about George Bailey in the movie It's a Wonderful Life. Remember that strengthening the community also strengthens you. As the slide shows, there is also a variety of strategies to leverage this social capital in a crisis. For time's sake, I will focus on just two. The more you use effective ways to stay closely connected, the more likely someone in your network will be able to meet your need. For example, think about hearing on a listserv that you monitor daily of a need by one of your colleagues. One of the 100 or so people on that listserv may likely know of someone who can assist. It also helps to be transparent and very specific about your need. Don't just say, we need money. Say our van broke down and we are currently unable to deliver food to the elderly in our community. There are often many ways that people can assist if they understand more clearly the need. Organizations are more resilient when they don't over-rely on any one person, idea, or system. Being diverse means that you do not rely completely on any one element for a critical function. Think, for example, about the electricity that you use. How many ways do you have to get that commodity, and to what extent would you be compromised without it? You need enough different sources of capacity that you can function even when elements of its capacity are unavailable or compromised. Diversity includes hard elements such as computers, electricity, and buildings. It also includes soft elements such as people, skill sets, knowledge, and ideas. Diversification needs to be thought about and addressed both in internal and external systems. There are a variety of ways to build diversity, but you must first identify where you have vulnerabilities. Then you can figure out which strategies will be most effective in addressing the need. In spite of your best efforts, in a crisis, there will be some resource availability challenges. As mentioned before, clearly identifying the problem, sharing your need, and seeking multiple viewpoints are all useful components of addressing these needs. In addition, you will need to be able to think outside the box, be adaptable, and be prepared. This requires good leadership and a strong team culture, as Cindy already discussed. And by the way, good leadership can come from all parts of an organization. It's not just a formal function. Resilience does not just happen. It requires a lot of hard work, introspection, and insight. It also requires good planning. In its most basic form, this requires doing the obvious. Guidance such as having a safe place to shelter and keeping a flashlight and a supply of fresh water are good counsel for a variety of potential crises. However, crises can come in a variety of forms. You must understand your vulnerabilities in order to be able to address them. This requires a good assessment of both your organization and its internal and external environment. It is important to have the right people involved in the planning process, and the planning team should include people from a cross-section of your organization. Your entire team should be involved at some level. People across the spectrum of the organization bring a variety of perspectives and perceptions of risk. Often others can see what you can't. A good way to start to think about this is to conduct an informal assessment. We just did a very simplistic version of this with you. To make an assessment more useful, you'll want to ensure you have included adequate questions to pick up the breadth of areas that strengthen organizational resiliency. You'll also want to include a cross-section of your team to ensure that you are getting a broader perspective. A companion exercise is to do some brainstorming with this larger group around the types of crises to which you may be vulnerable, and then try to prioritize them by likelihood and by the strength of the likely impact. Conducting this type of exercise will likely yield information on vulnerabilities that should feed into a more formal planning process. It is possible to do crisis planning as a standalone activity, but it is best done as a component of strategic planning. In any case, it should be integrated into your overall plans, policies, and procedures. The first step in planning for crisis is to conduct a risk assessment. This is really just a more formal way of doing what we described above. It typically involves interviews with staff, a review of systems and processes, etc. It is often helpful to have someone from outside the organization to conduct this assessment, as they can offer an outside perspective and tease out information that staff may be reluctant to share. The next step is then to analyze the information that has been collected to determine where your greatest vulnerabilities lie. Vulnerabilities can take a variety of forms, including everything from increased cost to a damaged reputation. A business impact analysis also seeks to quantify risk by seeking to assess the likelihood of a given event and by assigning values to each impact that helps an organization to compare the potential overall likely impact of various crises on your organization. In its simplest form, this is an equation where risk value equals probability of an event times cost of an event. In reality, the estimation of both probability and cost are a mix of science and art, with a lot of subjectivity built in. For example, what is the cost of a ruined reputation? It also takes someone with experience in statistical analysis. Even though this is somewhat subjective, it can help you to see where your greatest vulnerabilities lie. And this in turn helps you to turn your time and energy to preparing for those events that are the most likely to have a significant impact on your organization. Once you've identified the types of crisis for which you're preparing and the ways in which it is most likely to impact the organization, you can then begin to identify ways in which those impacts could be mitigated. Again, some mitigation measures may be more effective in addressing the impact than others. So this step also includes an analysis of cost and benefits in selecting those measures to implement. Once you've identified a set of measures, these need to be fully developed. Who will be responsible for implementing each measure? What will each measure cost and how will it be paid for? When and how will it be implemented? How will each measure be integrated into the organization's policies, practices, and culture? Questions such as these will need to be addressed in developing an overall plan. Once the plan has been developed, it will need to become understood and put into practice by everyone involved. This typically involves education and some type of regular practice. These plans will also need to be updated and adjusted to address any challenges that arise and to ensure that they continue to be effective as other organizational processes shift. To be sure, planning for an unknown crisis has its limitations, and though experience is valuable to draw upon, there are situations where our experience is no longer a good guide. There are more sophisticated tools, such as scenario planning, that use strategic foresight in an attempt to see into the future. But this is beyond the scope of this session and likely only cost-effective for large organizations. The improvements that you make through the evaluation of your strength in the various areas upon which we have touched today and through good planning will reap rewards for you, not only in your readiness for a variety of crises, but in strengthening your organization overall. Resilient organizations are healthy organizations. As a final thought, Angela Duckworth was an academic and researcher, and she wanted to learn what makes people successful. She studied people that were successful across a wide variety of pursuits and compared them to their less successful counterparts. Her research populations included West Point cadets, National Spelling Bee finalists, novice teachers, salespeople, and students. There was one thing more than any other that she found could predict a person's success or failure. It was not their IQ, or education, or income, or background. Instead, it was what she calls grit. As she defines it, grit is the tendency to sustain interest in and effort toward very long-term goals. Going back to Cindy's earlier discussion, grit can also be a feature of leadership and of a culture, and it can be a factor in the long-term success of an organization. Grit can help you through a crisis. On the night of December 9, 1914, Edison Industries was virtually destroyed by fire, and much of his life's work went up in flames. According to a December 1961 Reader's Digest article by Edison's son Charles, Edison calmly walked over to him and told his 24-year-old son, "Go get your mother and all her friends. They'll never see a fire like this again." When Charles objected, Edison said, "It's all right. We've just got rid of a lot of rubbish." Later at the scene of the blaze, Edison was quoted in the New York Times as saying, "Although I'm over 67 years old, I'll start all over again tomorrow." He stuck to his word and immediately began rebuilding the next morning without firing any of his employees. To be able to say, "Thank God for this fire, all our mistakes are burned up," and to forge a path ahead for your team is grit and contributes to the leadership and culture that are needed to survive a crisis. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Cindy.
Okay, sorry about that. I was trying to get myself off mute. So hello again, and we just have a few minutes left here, so I'm going to have to go through things quicker than I planned, but we want to stay on time. Just to summarize, your resiliency plan as an organization will depend on your culture and your team's ability to navigate change. There are 4 things listed here, or 3 things listed here, that will help you for navigating through change management within your organization. I'm just going to let you kind of look at those. I need to be able to move through, but one of the things I want to highlight is you need to be able to accept mistakes and will be made, and help the organization's response by expressing confidence in your management and staff. Things go wrong, focus on the solution rather than the blame. And you can read the other things on the screen. So lasting change comes from leveraging organizational strengths and mitigating or improving the weaknesses. It is driven by proactive behaviors and ways of thinking that make change part of the culture rather than reactionary. So as we move on, we are going to be moving into questions, but I want to thank you for spending this time with us today. I want to thank Doug for his presentation and Amanda for helping us with she's our technology expert, Amanda Crawford. Anna Hurley guided us through our questions and putting those in Google Docs. Ken Evans has been backup support. And I have to say a special call out to Lisa Much. She has done a huge amount behind the scenes to organize us for this conference. So I thank her so much for what she has done to create this virtual conference and partner with so many people. I would encourage you after this to, I'm hoping you're going to get to attend more of these conferences. It's kind of different this year, but it's a great opportunity to do things in a little bit different of a way. On our slide, you'll see our contact information, but you will also see the link to resilientcommunitiesforum.org if you want to see the rest of what is going on with the conference sessions. And our information is there, so if time is not allowing for your questions to all be answered, please feel free to reach out to us through our website, harsonyassociates.com, or to email us. We are happy to talk with you or answer any questions you might have. So thank you very much for your time. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Doug for any questions, and then I'll close.
Sorry, I've got too many things open. I'm trying to find the questions.
I'm going to interject real quickly, just to let Doug and Cindy know, if you guys have not posted questions yet for Doug and Cindy, please send them to questions in the chat. We're still waiting for questions. That being said, Doug and Cindy, the poll results that we had some delays on are loaded in that Google document if you'd like to review those.
Yay, thank you. And I'm sorry we didn't have time to go over those more, but I think you get the idea that while you were taking it, the points to really consider while you're evaluating yourself. I think we've only got about 2 minutes here for any questions, so it could be that we're not going to be able to do that for this session, but we're definitely open for you reaching out to us or to probably to Lisa at the CDC if you would like to get some more information.
Yes, thank you all, and I hope that you really enjoy the rest of the conference. And we've certainly enjoyed this time with you. I'm looking at the list of attendees, seeing some familiar faces as well as some people that I haven't met. But we're very happy to have all of you with us today. Thank you so much, and please reach out if you have any questions.
All right, I want to say one last thing. You know, I had this one motivational thought from Nelson Mandela. The greatest glory in living lies not in never failing, but in rising every time we fall. So I hope you can remember that as you live your life. Always get back up. And there's no such thing as failing. Just get back up. By Nelson Mandela. So thank you all for joining our session today.